So, moving on, I want to show.
As you're switching gears, I want to mention something on the equipment side of things. Mike's going to go over the equipment list. He's going to show you all kinds of new stuff. Luckily, we have contact with Bill Houghton Works at Mountain Chalet. We have a good relationship with the owners. So for at least the classroom portion of the class, I don't have from Bill the exact length of this, but he has a list of everyone in the class. It is now behind the counter at Mountain Chalet. He's going to get a new list there tomorrow because we had 2 late registrations. But you have a 15% discount at Mountain Chalet. For some portion of this class, I have to get the end date from Bill. So if you get all excited and want to buy cool new stuff, you can get it at a discount.
Can I mention something?
Yeah.
The CMC also, I think this is new over the past couple months, now has the promotive discount.
Yes.
The pro deals. It is phenomenal.
Is it gone beyond trip?
It has.
Yeah.
Yes, it's for general.
So, folks that aren't familiar with this, look up Promotive, figure out how you sign up for it. Companies are associated with a team. There's a CMC team. Everything on the Promotive site you won't have access to. And 30, 40, 50% discounts by some, and it's direct with the manufacturer. So it is a great way to get some gear as well. I do a number of things on Promotive. So. Okay, so we're just going to jump into talking about some different things. Here, I'll start on this side. So clothing, we talked some about clothing already. You get all the way to the totally intense. I'll start at that spectrum, where you can have, basically, this is the Marmot 8,000 meter pants, where you're wearing, a sleeping bag. With gear, again, how do you use it? What kind of system does it have? Does it have any kind of drop seat, especially if it's a whole suit? It's terrible to have some have a zipper down the middle. Some will have what they call a rainbow zipper. It's not a good time to find out. One layer has a rainbow zipper, one has the middle zipper, and they're not compatible when you're trying to go to the bathroom at 25,000 feet. So, you'll want heavier jackets. I used to have the same 8,000 meter jacket. Unfortunately, I don't have that one anymore, but still a pretty heavy down parka. From that perspective, and this weight of parka, you really want to be looking at a hood. A hoodless parka, when it's this warm, doesn't make sense, in my opinion, not to have a hood to keep your head warm as well. This is a nice thing to have right on the top of your pack. You come into a break and it's really cold. I climb and hike hot. I want to immediately, right out of the top of my pack, be able to immediately put my jacket on, start getting water and fuel in myself, and then 5 minutes, we're back up and we're climbing. And that's how it'll be on O'Neill and stuff like that as well. Then you start, and there's some amazing pieces of gear. Gear has come a long way in the last 5-10 years. And I don't claim to have all the latest stuff. It wouldn't make sense. But there are some incredibly warm, just super light jackets. This is a Montbell down. For the type of climbing that I do, and us living in Colorado, I am a big fan of down versus synthetic. If I lived in Seattle, I climbed Rainier often in the Pacific Northwest, I'd have a totally different feeling. For the type of weather that we have and the mountains that I typically go to, I am a firm believer in down. And some of the down things are just so light, and this is like advertised as a 10-degree jacket and stuff like that. It used to be, for the next layer, and we'll tie this into the gear that we'll have for class, you always had fleece, right? Regular fleece, 200 weight, 300 weight fleece, or the windstopper type fleece like this, which is still nice. But then you can pair, and feel free, we'll have some time come up when we're packing up and stuff, and feel the weight of this versus nowadays they have these little puff jackets. Again, synthetic or down, I like the down ones, and these things will ball up to, teeny size, less than the size of an Nalgene bottle, and they are immensely warm, warmer than the fleece, in my opinion, and the weight doesn't even possibly compare from that side. Soft shell, for smaller, shorter trips and stuff like that, soft shell is really good. You get into really gnarly condition, you're going to want the type of Gore-Tex or E-Vent jacket on the outside. But for smaller trips or ice climbing and things like that, again, soft shell jackets are amazing things nowadays. I really like them. For your, let me go the other direction. For your bottom layer, you're going to want to make sure you have nice long underwear. Lighter color long underwear, especially for your top, is what you want to look for. That is so hard to find nowadays. They want the blacks or the dark grays. I'm looking for the whites or the off-whites and light grays and stuff like that. Again, because you'll get into certain conditions where it's just going to be brutally hot. He's paid me, so I don't include it in, he paid me off, so I don't include it in the slideshow here, but you know, there's Greg climbing in his long underwear, bottoms and top with his harness on, you know, that was about 20,000 feet, 19,000 feet on Shishapangno. It was it. I've got the picture. But again, it can be very hot. But then again, some of these bigger trips, you're going to want to go for the true, you know, heavyweight, you know, fleece type long underwear, even potentially as well. Okay, so on top of that, a good windproof, weatherproof layer. I am a huge fan of either bibs or suspenders. Bibs are nice because you have little pockets. You can keep, you know, an energy bar warm, so you're not gnawing on a sub-zero, you know, block of ice energy bar, etc. One thing I will strongly suggest, full-length zips, whether they're pants or bibs like this. Because when you have your crampons on and you don't have these pants on yet and a storm rolls in, you don't want to have to take the time to take your crampons all the way off to put your pants on. You can throw your pants on at any time when you've got the full-length zipper up and down. It seems like less and less manufacturers are doing this. This one happens to be Arc'teryx. I personally think they have some excellent gear the last number of years from that side. On the top, for a weatherproof layer, kind of older school, 2-3 layer Gore-Tex. It's pretty heavy. It is bomb-proof. You know, I had this on Shishapangma. It worked great and stuff like that. But with the layers that you can do nowadays, I am personally a fan of just the really thin Gore-Tex jackets. Okay, and I'm not using this necessarily for heat. It'll give me some heat, but I'm using the other layers for the insulation. And that way I can have more variability, right? It's really wet out, but it's not cold out. I can just use this. It's cold and it's storming out. I can put the insulation on underneath this jacket and layer that way. A good hood that will work with your helmet. Can your helmet fit underneath your hood? A lot of, especially climbing jackets, are going to have that ability and maybe even an adjustment to have it not down, you know, at your nose when you don't have a helmet on, but then again, and bring it up. If you've got your helmet on, you can lower the hood down so it's still, you know, covering, the hood isn't up here and not protecting most of your head from that side. And I'm, of course, flying through this, so please, if you've got questions, shoot them out at any time. So some other clothing-related items from a hat perspective and headgear, I guess I'll call it. A lighter weight beanie hat, you know, something when it's not too cold that you could either sleep in. I know this is going to fit perfectly under my helmet. I can adjust my helmet with this one, no problems from that side. A balaclava that I can either sleep or climb in. It's a full face opening balaclava from that side. And it works well. It's not too thick. If the weather gets really gnarly, and this isn't, and I'll sleep in this a lot of times also, then I will go for maybe something that's got more face protection, okay? It's got a cut for the mouth. Ones that don't have a full opening for the mouth, I really don't like. You know, like those neoprene types that just have those little drilled in holes, if you've ever seen. I'll cut out a little opening there because you're sucking wind at these altitudes anyway. You don't want to be breathing through something else. The one thing that you do, and I didn't bring it tonight actually, is a buff. You know, if you've ever seen the buffs or watched Survivor, when you get to some of these high altitudes, you can get what's called the Kumbu cough. You just start coughing because of the altitude, and having some moisture and keeping some moisture in your lungs. So to breathe through something really thin like a buff will help keep some more moisture in your lungs, and you don't develop any bronchial type conditions, etc. But anyway, something like this, where if I combine this with my goggles and other things, basically my whole face is protected and it's nice and warm. There are also some really neat, again, this is a Montbell, really neat, even extremely light down hats. These things are burning hot. They're great. So, moving into the hands, you're going to want a variety of layers for your hands. Some thin liner gloves, this is kind of what I'd consider more of a mid-weight liner glove. You will go through at least one pair of these on a trip. Striking your lighter and stuff like that, you'll wear through. If you do get little holes in your fingertips while you're on a trip, because I've seen this before, try to take some of your duct tape, because you'll have duct tape in your repair kit, and close up that hole. Put a little piece of duct tape over it. We had one person on our Denali trip had a little hole through their index finger in their liner glove. They took off their gloves on Summit Day. He took off his bigger mittens on Summit Day, still had his liner gloves on, and he got a little bleb, start of a frostbite, on his finger, exactly where that hole was from just doing things during the trip that had made a hole in their gloves. Then you get into more just a standard glove, from that perspective. Ones that have, removable liners give you a little bit more options from that side. I'm a huge fan of idiot leashes on all my gloves. So you can put them on, and if you do have to take something off, you're not taking it off. You want to be able to do everything with your gloves on, but I'm not going to lie to you, at times you're going to have to take your glove off to get something done when you're outside. You do that, and all of a sudden your glove hits the glacier, and zoom, it's going down the glacier. This will be your warning number one on the field day sessions. If you put things down on the ground as you're trying to do things, they will mysteriously fly down the glacier as your instructors go by. Okay? So try not to just place things on the ground. And it's not to be jerks about it. That's what happens when you're on the glacier. You put something down, a gust of wind comes along, or it just breaks that friction and starts going, that piece of gear is gone for you. And then again, you get into these really huge, mitts from this perspective. You want to be able to wear liner gloves underneath mittens like this as well. But the advantage of a mitten is keeping your fingers all together and sharing that heat. So you don't want such a thick glove underneath this that it's inhibiting sharing that heat from finger to finger. That's the advantage of a big mitten. And again, ones that have liners that pull out are kind of nice and give you some additional options. Footwear. Nice, good quality socks. Okay, I'm a huge fan of the wool still. I know there's fleece out there and different synthetics and stuff like that. There's nothing like the wool. I personally love the Smart Wool socks. I still am kind of old school and use a liner sock as well as a regular sock. From that side, what works well for you. Your feet are going to swell at altitude, and especially on longer trips when you're on your feet day after day for long amounts of time. So you want to make sure that your boots are not tight. If anything, you want your boots a little bit loose. At the beginning of the trip, cinch them down more, and then be able to loosen them up as you go. If your feet start to swell and your boots are, hey, these feel okay, they're just a little snug. No, wrong size boot, in my opinion, for a high altitude boot. You want that space that you can kind of grow into, so to say.
Do you go with lace-ups or buckle-ups?
From a boot or a
For your
crampon?
boot?
So boots, great.
You're not there yet, but you were talking about.
Yeah, no, great way. So most boots that I have personally used are what I'll call more the lace-up. I'll show you a variety of that. The plastic double boots are a great way to go. Now, boot technology has come, again, along. There are some great non-plastic boots that I would have no qualms about using on Rainier, Kilimanjaro, peaks such as that. You start getting into a Denali or anything colder or above that, you want to be in a double boot from that perspective. I'm most used to lace-up. But lace-up, it takes time. You hear those stories and you think that can't be true. If, it takes me half an hour to get my boots on and gaiters on, in the tent at 2 a.m., at 25,000 feet. And that's not a lie. Everything is an effort. So again, I'm a huge fan also of custom liners for plastic boots. So this one also, I have custom footbeds. Because those cheap, it amazes me how you buy $300, $500 boots and they have a 5-cent piece of felt at the bottom of the boot. If you're on your feet that long, I like doing custom footbeds from that side. And then the custom liners, I'll go ahead and throw this out. Feel the weight of that. as that goes around.
So that's not the one that came with your scope?
It is not. So I used a custom place to mold my foot for that liner.
Who makes that?
Custom Foot up in Denver used to be Mountain Miser, a shop up there. Lee. What's Lee's last name? I'll see if I can find it for you. He's still.
Custom foot.
He's yeah. So custom. If you search on Custom Foot or the Custom Foot, Denver, Colorado, on Google, you should see it. His name is Lee something. He used to be do it out of an outdoor shop that has since closed. He still does it. I have my Telemark custom liners, my Mountaineering custom liners from him, and he's amazing.
What are they rated for temperature wise?
They typically don't rate them, but they have different types, and some are warmer than others. So I don't. The short answer is I don't know.
So, I mean, my boots are like yours, they're low as Savetta's, and my liners are really bulky and lace up and everything.
Exactly. Having something, so that's yet usually for people that aren't familiar, usually what goes in here, and I should have brought it, I think I still have it somewhere, is just a stock liner that goes in like that, and it has yet another set of laces. So now I'm having to put the liner boot on like that, lace that up, put it in here, then lace this up, then get my gaiter on. You can see all the steps involved in the time. So another reason I really like those, because that locks my foot in, and there's no laces on that at all. And they can tweak that. Denal, yeah.
I have a couple of questions. The first one though is, I'm looking to buy one pair of technical boots, and I'd like them to do ice climbing and mountaineering. Is
Okay.
there a fit difference between the two? I'm looking for?
What's your aspiration from the mountaineering side is what I'd look at. If you're looking at doing a Rainier, a Mexican volcano in Ecuador and stuff like that, that level as well as ice climbing, I would steer you to one type of boot. If your goal is really something like a Denali and you want to do ice climbing, I'll ice climb in these, no problem. Are these clunkier? Are these harder? Not harder, but different to ice climb in? Absolutely. So, it matters what your aspiration is from that side. I'd probably start even leaning towards that smaller, svelter, not quite as warm boot. Because if I really eventually go to Ecuador, Mexican volcanoes, and then eventually decide this is for me, then I'm probably willing to invest in something bigger at that point in time.
So,
But from a size perspective, when you're talking something like a Rainier and even Mexican volcanoes and Ecuador, you're not worrying too much about your swelling of your foot. Those are also shorter trips from that side. You still don't want them too tight. Hopefully you can find a boot that you can really cinch down in that case for the ice climbing. And the big thing there is a boot that will lock your heel in. So your heel is not lifting up, because that's what's going to throw you off, especially in ice climbing, is if your heel will lift inside your boot.
and then what about there's the heat molded liners that come with a lot of the double boots?
Yep. And that's to a degree, that's kind of like the custom boot here. So a lot of them will now have moldable custom liners, and that's kind of a step getting to something like this. So it's stock, but now it isn't just one size fits all. At least you'll buy the boot, and then they'll custom mold the stock liner to your foot. And in that case, I'd probably start with that before I would invest in this, unless you're really concerned about the weight, because the weight doesn't compare from that side. This though is a vapor barrier. This locks in all of the moisture to your foot, and many liner boots do. My feet sweat. Sorry, TMI probably, but my feet sweat, and it's just nothing I can do about it. So one of the things I learned is I will always bring a little bit more sock than somebody's that their feet don't sweat. And I always keep one set of socks for my summit push that I haven't used on the trip, ideally. Or maybe only once and twice, but they're not in the full rotation of use. And that way they just haven't packed out and everything else. And when I get into the tent, I just know I'm gonna have to try to dry these out some, let them dry out. Of course, I sleep with them in my sleeping bag, because you don't want these to freeze overnight, especially if they're wet. And then next morning you have to put blocks of ice on your feet. And the nice thing about these things, though, is this won't absorb water. The stock liners that have those nice soft, fabric-y type things on the inside, those are going to absorb water. And if you can't dry them out, and usually you can't, they're going to get heavier and heavier and potentially colder and colder. This will not absorb the water from that side. So,
You know, the question on what kind of boots, if you're buying one for this class, I can bring in, I have a couple examples I can bring in next class. But just, you see a lot of the sort of synthetic / leather hybrid boots. La Sportiva, Montreal puts out some really good ones. They have a pretty good selection at Mountain Chalet. Those can be really nice and work very well for this kind of thing, and for a mix of technical plus glacier. So I can bring in, I have a couple of different pair that I can bring in.
you know, in Aconcagua and Ecuador, maybe not Aconcagua, in Ecuador, Mexican volcano, Rainier, you're going to want a nice gaiter, but you're not necessarily looking at this so much for insulation. It gives you some insulation, but it's mainly just keeping the snow out. Again, just nuances. I'm a big fan of some of the ones that have replaceable straps on the bottom, because this is the part, if anything, that you're going to chew up, hopefully more than the top part, you know, except for doing the snag thing and getting a crampon hole. I'm sure we've all done that at times. You get better and better with that time. But some of these will actually, you can replace this strap on the bottom, and that way you get a lot more life out of those type of gaiters. Don't get the really short, just ankle, you know, mid-calf type gaiters. They need to be the gaiters that come up to, you know, just below your knee is what you'll want. Then if you're in a boot like this, but you are doing something that's a little bit more serious like a Denali, you may want to look at a full overboot. So this is a 40 below overboot, and this has, again, it's more just fabric on the top, but the bottom part is all on neoprene, okay? Once you have this on your boot, you're committed, of course, to being your crampons. You have absolutely no traction on the bottom. This is unfortunately where you hear about people stepping outside their tents to use the bathroom or something like that, taking a wrong step, and then they go down the mountain. So you got to be careful. Big thing with these, and talking about integration of crampons to your boots, is whenever you buy a crampon, bring your boot. Whenever you buy a new boot, bring your crampons, because you want to make sure that they're always compatible from that perspective. And what happens is this just goes ahead into here, and it slips in, and then once you've gotten to that point on the trip, you're pretty much committed to keeping this on your boot the whole time. You don't want to take it on and off. It's kind of takes some effort to get it on and off from that perspective. Yes. Yep. Yeah. This is more for insulation. This is to keep your foot warm, and that's what this. You know, it's like neoprene. It's like a scuba suit. You know, it's a good like 10 mil, not quite 10 mil. Feels like neoprene that's keeping your foot warm. The next step up is more a full integrated boot. Now these really have taken off in the last, I'd say, 4 to 10 years. You know, and this is where you've got a gaiter integrated with an outer boot and then an inner boot as well. And this one, for example, I don't have a custom liner. This is a really nice liner. It is a little bit more heavy. It's got the great heat retention with some of the materials it has. And some of the things that I love about these boots, and that gets into the question that was asked about lacing and everything else, these have the speed lace systems. And I love these. So what you do is when you're here, you adjust it by adjusting the length at the bottom. And then once you have this, all you're doing is you're putting your foot on, you're going left, right, left, Velcro. And you're done, okay? And that is a lot easier to get done. That's true on the liner boot, as well as the outer boot has the exact same thing. Back, forth, back, zip on, and you're locked in. It makes it much easier. And then you zip it up and you're done. You know, they're a little bit pricey. And you need, you know, you don't need something like this on a shorter trip. But on a possibly a Denali, we see these on Denali a fair amount, but definitely a Himalayan type trip, you know, that's where you get into a boot like this.
So Mike, are those boots good for Denali?
Are these boots good for Denali?
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, do you absolutely need these on a Denali? No. When I did Denali in these boots with those neoprene over boots is what I did it. Now that I own these, I'll probably wear these on the overnight that we go on here in Colorado. Why not? They're going to be toasty. They're easy to get on and off. I don't have to lace them up. But did I own them when I did Denali? You know, did I own them? You know, should you go buy these right now? No. It's not just snark. What's that?
They're about $800 or something?
I haven't looked too. They're north of 800 nowadays. But it used to be. Help me out. Was the only company Mie that used to make them. Then La Sportiva. Now Scarpa and others have them out as well. So you have a lot more choices on what fits your foot well from that perspective. So. Okay, moving on. Whoops, I missed another hat. You know, a windstopper type hat. Water systems. Having bottles that you can go ahead and have an insulation and that you can decide where on your waist strap or something like that you want them is a good thing to have. You'll want at least a minimum of one of these, and that's true even of the class. And we'll talk about the class coming up. You know, conventional Nalgene bottle, probably old, non-BPA free, but I've done enough damage to my body anyway. Very, very subjective and know your limitations. Camelbacks. I personally love Camelbacks. It facilitates me staying hydrated. Biggest thing I can do to make sure I'm going all day is to be drinking and drinking continuously. So I have learned how to work Camelback systems in some pretty harsh conditions. You have to have backups. I'm always willing to go ahead and something goes wrong, I'll have my knife, I'll slash this open and I'll empty the water into, I always still carry an Nalgene type bottle and have that as well. And I'm willing to sacrifice this if I need to. But if you know how to use these at altitude, I've used this up to Summit Day on an 8,000 meter peak inside of my down, and the hose stays inside my down and things as well. But you do have to be careful. You don't get wet with them. You know, how do they freeze up? What do? Are you reliant? And this is where you're going to learn something we didn't talk too much about. I'm giving you some of my thoughts on gear. I know at times, like right now, Greg is biting his tongue because he is the opposite feeling as to Camelbacks. Learn from your instructors. Just don't take what I'm saying, that's for sure. I had problems with Camelback, sure. On one of the Rainier climbs, before they used to have these quick release connects, they used to just have the barbs, and I was pulling on my hose before leaving camp, and I pulled it off the barbs. I epoxy my barbs on after that trip, and I put the water into my backpack right before leaving for Summit Day. And as an instructor, I was also carrying a stove, and I drank stove water going up, so, sooty water, because I still needed the hydration, because the backpack I had is semi-waterproof. So I was able to get some water out of the bottom of it, and I drank this nasty tasting water. So is this perfect? No. Is it okay or right for me? Yes. You? No, I can't say that.
I'll just offer my share to that. I do have a counter opinion. I've tried the Camelback and I've had 2 failures with it, and that was enough for me, where I didn't like how it worked at extremes. The other thing in terms of Nalgene bottles, something I've experimented with now on one high altitude trip, I am kind of working with. If you're into the ultralight world, a lot of people have thrown away their Nalgenes and start using empty Gatorade bottles because they weigh about 2 ounces less than a Nalgene. And if you've got 3 of them in your pack, that's a lot. I'm really leery of the narrower mouth, but so far, one major trip, I was down in South America, got up to about 20,000 feet with no freezing problems. So recycled Gatorade bottles you might see some people out there with those if they're into ultralight stuff.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You keep using the term, and I'm curious about, you keep saying high altitude. What's high altitude?
Fourth version above a 14er for Colorado, for our purposes right now.
And as I'm using relative to gear, it's a relative scale as well. You know, at certain high altitude, yes, a double boot for some things, but high altitude, when you're talking this thing, you're talking probably either a Denali at 20,000 feet or a 23,000 foot type Aconcagua possibly, or really 24 and above. So it matters what piece of gear we're talking about, of where we draw in that line, so to say. But in general, above 14,000 feet is what we're concentrating on in this class. Does that hopefully answer the question? We'll get into more specifics. Okay, I'm going to start flashing through stuff, looking at time. Shovels, don't bring or buy the plastic Lexan blades. They will shatter in cold temperatures. Okay, go for a good metal blade. Yes, it's going to weigh a little bit more. I like the ones with holes so you can take it off. You can use it as a dead man in certain circumstances. For something in Colorado, no problem. A shorter handle and or a T handle. For an expedition, I like the D handle. Why? Again, how does your gear work together? Okay, I'm wearing this glove and I'm trying to use this T handle. How do I grip it? You know, it's very hard. Right? But knowing how your gear works together, even with this big of a glove, now I can't do this with that type of shovel. Okay? Plus this one goes a little higher, and when you're shoveling and sucking wind, it's a little bit better. Obviously extends up when I'm talking about the length of the shovel and stuff. Okay. You typically will not be using big 10 mil type ropes on your climbs. You'll be using, 9, 8, even 7.5 millimeter diameter ropes. Matters on type of climb at the length and the number of teammates you have. We'll get more into that in the future. But using a single line of either a half rope or a double rope. This one I think is a half if I remember. This is a double. This is a double rope. This is fine for glacier travel. Depending if you're doing a gnarly, lead, alpine, rock, etc. No, you're not going to want to take leader falls on a single strand, double rope using it as a single. Glacier travel, absolutely. 60 meter here. Harnesses. The big thing with the harness that I want to point out is leg loops, especially that you don't need to step into. Again, you've got your crampons on, so you really want to try to avoid leg loops that you have to step into. Plus, it's just harder. Leg loops you have to step into are typically not adjustable. So what do you do when I'm just wearing my long underwear and my Gore-Tex versus I'm wearing those down pants? You want to have that variability to adjust either your leg loops or the affectionately known as the diaper type of harness that comes up and then attaches in the front from that side. Some gear loops are good. This is more alpine harness. There are some amazingly light, as Greg calls them, G-string harnesses. He has one. It's great. It's light. It's a backup. You don't want to take a fall in it. I'll say that. And that goes for women as well as men. It does not feel good. All the gear on here, we'll talk about that in a second a little bit more. I won't talk through most of that right now. If you're doing a lot of ice climbing, then you're going to want, so that's a diaper style. Here's one, for example, that I'm talking about with the adjustable leg loops. And it doubles back just like your regular waist harness from that side. This one has more loops for gear, and then you can also have these nice ice screw grabbers on it. Okay. Speaking about protection, most often, especially we'll be using pickets. Occasionally we'll use flukes. Pre-slung, we have these. You'll be getting them as part of the team gear from the club. You want them pre-strung, and you remember from BMS about how you want to place them and everything else. We'll review that when we go out in St. Mary's. One thing I will note about these, after you've been using them enough, you're going to get kind of this mushroom head on the top where it's just been banged too much. Just take a hacksaw and take 1/4 inch off the top and start fresh again from that perspective. Ice screws, we'll talk more when we do ice climbing, but you want some kind of quick entry ice screw. There's different types that have the spin type, etc. And nice, good, I'm a big fan of the black diamond ones, so that happens to be what I used, and I brought a couple different lengths. Nice, big, aggressive teeth. It should be probably in a Mountaineering Museum at this point, but this goes in pretty easily, screws in. This is the old type ice screw. The snarg, there you go. So it recognizes a snarg. So imagine being a second, you would actually pound into the ice, and then when you were the second, you had to see all these threads, you had to sit there and take it out with that many threads. It was not fun at all. From that side. Okay, let's see. I am a big fan of trekking poles. Personal choice again. Single trekking pole, mattering on the type of climb that you're doing, in one hand, my ice axe in the other. Okay? It just gives me more balance, it feels good and everything else. At any time, if I fall, I am willing to lose my pole and it goes down the crevasse, it goes flying down the mountain, so be it, and I will self-arrest. But I like that feel. That takes some practicing and getting used to. So if you want to do this and practice some on your own or on the field session, why is that hard? Ice axe always in your uphill hand, of course. I'm making my switch over to a different direction. Now I need to figure out how am I going to efficiently switch hands with my axe and my pole. That's the drawback with the poles. I also like the ones with some insulation on them. One thing I'll point out real quick on the ice axe that I will say you all want to do, pad the top of your ice axe. If you're holding a metal heat sink, is what it is, in your hand all day long, it is going to make your hand cold, and dangerously so potentially at altitude. All I do is I take some insulation, pipe insulation, window insulation, I wrap it around the head of my axe, I still have my adze and my pick, pretty accessible, and then I take some tape, electrical tape, duct tape, or whatever else, kind of squeeze that down, and now I've got this nice insulating layer that my hand is holding as I'm climbing. You can also, there's a lot of leashes out on the market. I think you're spending a lot of money that you don't need to. Personally, what I like, just get some tubular webbing, get a piece of bungee cord, small bungee cord that you can get at Mount Shelley REI, string it through, figure out what is the maximum length that you're going to want in case you have to reach up over a bergstrom. What's the length of that? And then just go ahead and you can make your own leash for a couple bucks.
Pretty cool.
Okay, from that side. I can show you more about how to do this if you're interested in everything else some other time. Another personal choice, I don't like the leash on my wrist. I like attaching the leash to my harness. Makes it much easier for be able to switch hand to hand on those transitions. Personal choice. You fall and you don't have control of your ice axe and this thing is whipping around as you're going down the mountain, bad things can and will happen. That's the drawback. We already talked a little bit about ice tools. If you're going to bring an ice tool, I actually have more of a nice climbing leash. I'm going to have this type of leash. So this is not a leashless tool, obviously, an older. But if I have to have an axe and a tool, I'm going to still want a ice tool that I can still plunge down into the snow and use for, self-belay from that perspective, even if I'm using a tool. So this is the type of tool, for example, that I used on the west rib of the mountain. Crampons, make sure they're compatible. I already talked about that. 12-point semi-rigid is the type of crampons typically talked about that you'll want to go with. Make sure they're compatible. They work again with your boot. If you can do full step in, that's great. That's personally what I like. Will they pop off potentially? That's where knowing your boot and maybe changing the shape of your toe bail a little bit can play in. Steel. Most often you're going to go with the steel. Greg, for example, has used the aluminums on Rainier, right? Remember? That works fine, but they're not going to hold up, and especially if you have to transition some mixed rock and ice to glacier snow. So if you have to buy one semi-rigid 12-point horizontal front points. And so ice climbing crampons typically have the vertical front points. Mountaineering typically have the horizontal front points. You can still climb ice absolutely fine in this type of front points, not an issue. Snowshoes, you want a good pair of snowshoes. These happen to be ones from many years ago that were pretty specialized. Unfortunately, they don't make them anymore. You already have crampons, so why should I have all of the cleats on the bottom? So my crampons actually fit in to this, and then I use my crampon in this plate, okay? That's a pretty specialized type thing. They don't make them, unfortunately, anymore. You can find them every once in a while. One thing I do want to point out, you want to create some kind of leash system. You go into a crevasse, what happens when you're, oops, I didn't mean to fall on that thing, hopefully that's okay. If you don't want that to fall into the bottom of the crevasse, just hit the camera thing. So you want some kind of leash. You can have ones that just simply girth hitch around your leg, but I find that always kind of loosens up and then it could fall off my foot. So what I did is just a thin piece of cord and then actually just a Fast-Tech buckle that I can adjust based on my clothing again to have this in case it falls off. But you'll read about this and you'll want some kind of leash on there. Very good eye protection. You'll want good eye protection. The sun is brutal out there. The darkest lenses pretty much that you can get. These are older style Joe Bowls. And these are the X8 lenses, which is the darkest ones they make. You want to look at the visible light transmission and get the very low visible light transmission lenses. These actually, this type of lens comes with a warning saying don't drive with this type of glass. It's not meant for that. It's meant for those super bright type of conditions. But that's what you want, again, to protect yourself. Fine glasses that could give you good coverage. They don't have a big gap at the bottom. They don't let a lot of light in from the side. They have some much more sleek, modern-looking ones nowadays. But just get a good glass that is dark lenses and fits your face well. I'm a big fan of something called Pikes. It's this surfer dude out of Southern California that creates these little nose pieces, go around your bridge of your sunglasses, and they protect your nose. Okay? And because you will burn your nose, you will burn places that you never thought you could burn, mountaineering. You will burn the inside top of your mouth. You're breathing hard, light's reflecting off the snow, hitting the top of your mouth. Okay? Very good sunscreen, applying sunscreen often, lip balm, and stuff like that to not literally, we've had people on near trips, more Denver than Pikes Peak region, get second and third degree burns on their face from the sun because they didn't have sunscreen on there, they forgot or something crazy like that.
Comment on the glacier glasses. You know, Mike mentioned visible light reduction. You'll see the rating stated two ways. Off-the-shelf glacier glasses will come in the high 80% visible light reduction. 86 to 88 is your standard off-the-shelf. If you're not planning on going higher than about 18,000 feet or out for long periods of time at those, so if you're doing like up to Ecuador where you might be out for a day or two on a glacier, the off-the-shelf ones are fine, and they're fine for Colorado. If you're going to be out for a long period of time or you're heading towards 20,000 feet, then you want something in the 94 to 96% realm. And those are usually a special order because they aren't going to stock them at Mountain Chalet. You got to get those ordered. You can actually, there's a company out of Boulder that can put, I have a prescription lens in mine. But you do, depending on what your long-range plans are, if you're buying glacier glasses, you want something like, if you're going very high, 94, 96% visible light reduction. Sometimes they'll say 4% visible light allowed, but and those are the ones that they tell you can't drive in. So
what is the difference in price between the 80s versus
good question. It's not extremely different. I think it's probably $20-30 maybe on the pair, but possibly even less in the jewel bow. It's just a matter of they don't stock them usually, and you got to order it. But the high-end jewel bows are coming in around 120 these days.
It's more of a specialty item. People aren't going to be buying them just to go skiing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, good goggles, same thing. A lens that doesn't let much light through, but still you can wear these in a storm just fine, even if it's cloudy out, and even if it's at night or something like that and it's in a storm, you can still get by and see through these, but a really good glass. Besides the light transmission, these have a physical, but I also think a psychological, huge warming effect. They really, if you're getting cold and you can wear goggles and stuff like that versus sunglasses, it really keeps you a lot warmer to wear goggles from that side.
I have a question. Do we have the same rating on those goggles?
A lot of manufacturers will not give you the spec. Oakley will give you their light transmission. If you look at their different lenses, their iridium lenses, as these are called, and stuff like that, they'll give you those visible transmission aspects to their lenses. But yeah, you want, in general, I'm still looking for a darker lens, because even if it's stormy out, usually it's going to be stormy and daytime, and it's amazingly bright in the clouds still most of the times. So I'm still looking for something, at least in the mid to hopefully upper 80s to mid 90s blocking. So only 5 to 15% allowable transmission through the lens. Beacon, we already kind of talked about. Helmet, a good climbing helmet. I like some of the extremely lightweight helmets that are out nowadays. Just know, you take a hit in one of these helmets, you're going to throw it away. okay? It's not like the old Aaron Rocks where you're gonna take a number of big hits on it and you can still use it. You know, 1 or 2 hits, you check the integrity of it, you're gonna have to chuck it and use another one. Right now I have it set up for ice climbing, that's why I have the visor on it. You know, normally for an expedition I wouldn't have the front clear visor, and that just keeps more protection from my eyes as I'm swinging my tools in this light.
Would you ever have more than one helmet?
No, no. If something happens, you take such a big hit on your helmet, hopefully you're able to continue versus calling your trip off. And at that point, what's the risk level you're willing to take? Maybe you call your trip because you're not willing to take that risk, or in that unlikely case, I'm going to decide to push on. Personal choice again. First aid, we won't talk about first aid tonight. Water filter. Favorite, pee bottle. Okay. How many people have done a lot of winter camping or any winter camping? Raise your hand. Okay. For those that have done winter camping, have you used a pee bottle?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. People that have used pee bottles, you will swear by it once you use it. It's also, altitude is inversely proportional to your, you know,
You don't need to open it.
willingness. Oh no, that's no problem. You clean it out. And
Go to the dishwasher.
I won't go into this dishwasher. Wow, there you go. Clearly mark your pee bottle, okay? Clearly mark it and be able to identify it in the middle of the night in the dark. Don't go for anything less than 48 ounces. Trust me, 48, a lot of people even, so you're going, oh, what's the story with this one? A lot of people will even use 96-ounce bottles. You're in a big storm, and you don't want to even into your vestibule, which is kind of nasty because that's where you're cooking in your tent. You want a bigger pee bottle from that side, and get used to using it, practice it. It sounds kind of strange, and this is an equal opportunity class, gals. So this isn't just for the guys, okay? So my wife always loves when I bring this of hers, but gals, go buy the Lady J, the Freshette, different brand names from this perspective. Go ahead, you know, I'm not going to be shy about this. Practice using it and stuff like that, because when you're in the middle of the storm and you need to go to the bathroom, it can be a convenience thing, it can be a time thing, it can be a safety thing. Going out into a big storm, if it's really bad weather, to have to go to the bathroom. So do what's right, and it's a great piece of gear. It's one of my wife's favorite pieces of gear. So love me saying that one. Oh, wait a second, now we got camera. Now I'm really in trouble. When you do, depending on the trip and the route, you may be required to remove all of your waste. On Rainier, you get blue bags like this. You put, number 2, your solid waste in the blue bag, you put it in the inner bag, you do the twist tie on this, and you're required to take it off. The normal route on Denali, you have to bring I love this acronym, but a CMC, a Clean Mountain Can, not our CMC, on the route with you and bring all of your waste out that way. So you're gonna have waste considerations besides just urine from that side. I like what I call just a little ditty bag. It's got, my toothpaste on it, in it, a little toothbrush, earplugs, things like that. I used to be a contact wearer and climbed to 8,000 meters with contacts. So if we have any contact wearers and that's a question or concern, how does that work at altitude? Test it out, but it's very manageable in my perspective from that side. Anyway, I won't pull out some of the other things here. Let's get going. A little journal. I love bringing a little journal. You go on the trips for a reason. You want to be able to remember it. I was glancing through this last night as I was pulling out my gear, and this happens to be my one from Shishapangma. And I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, I remember when that happened and that happened. Waterproof paper, something that's not going to fall apart. Yes, it helps to be able to write small and on both sides. And then what I also really recommend, is the space pens. So you can write on the waterproof pages, you can write sitting in your sleeping bag upside down, and it's pressurized and still writing on the paper. You don't have to write facing the right way and things along those lines. I think we're coming to the end. Some luxury items. They have some great, extremely light pillows nowadays. Maybe this is more of a base camp type thing. But you can use ball up your jacket. We've all done that and stuff like that. But they have some amazing. It has down inside of it. Oh, and I missed a couple things. Down inside of it, and it is inflatable. Yes. Yeah, you can feel free to pull it out. Okay. Speaking of down, one thing I totally missed, the bottom row here. Sleeping pads, and what you'll want from a sleeping pad. Just the wrong way, I think. Sleeping pad perspective. You will want a closed cell insulation pad. You'll want two pads. One is closed cell, such as the Insulate pads, Z-Rest, Ridge Rest type pads like these. You want to put this down on the bottom, okay? And then on top of that, you want some kind of open cell pad, a Thermarest. I am a huge fan. Now they're more than Thermarest, but it used to be the exception of the inflatable pads. They have synthetic, they could have nothing inside, they're just air, they're just an air mattress. They could have synthetic inside or down inside. Again, I'm a fan of the down. Down, you cannot breathe into these pads. If you breathe in and blow up the down ones, they will get more and more moisture inside of there. It won't insulate, won't have the insulation properties, and it'll get heavier and heavier along your trip. Some have spots where you have two hands and you pump that way. It's a real pain to use those. The ones I like have these real super ultralight bags. You kind of fluff it up, close it up. It's got an attachment point here, and then you just push the air into your pad. Okay? Exped is the brand. Now it's owned by Outdoor Research, OR, that I use their pads. And this thing is not just for insulation. This is comfort. I used to use, the 3/4 inch Thermarest that probably most of us or all of us used to use. This is 2.8 inches thick. It's lighter than a Thermarest, and I sleep like a baby on it. And you get such a better night's sleep. And if you get a better night's sleep, you're going to be well rested, and you're going to have a better climb. And it may make the sun. So anyway. This particular one, I want to say, I don't recall, but 5.8 sticks in my head, but I would want to look up the specs. R value is the insulation value of the different mats. You'd want to look at that and get a sense. Again, the ones with the down have a much more higher rated insulation or R value to it, just like your insulation in your house, R rated. You want that. Often the question we'll get is, do I put this on the ground or do I put this one on the ground? The thing with an open cell pad is air is actually circulating the thermodynamic properties from the bottom of the pad to the top of the pad. If you have this on the bottom, it's circulating the cold air against this pad, and you're really getting only slight insulation from the down and then this barrier. You have this barrier, and then you put this on top, and it's going to keep you a lot warmer. And in the open cell pad, you're not going to get that circulation directly against the snow like you would when you have it in this configuration. So that's why this pad goes on the bottom.
Mike, what is the brand of that?
Exped, X-P-E-D. Exped, and they make a down mat and they make a synth mat, I think it's called, or syn mat. I like the down mat. The down mat is the one with the down inside versus the synthetic one. And they did make different sizes. The 2.8 is kind of their standard height. They make different lengths and widths. They also make a deluxe that's like, 4 inches thick or something like that I used at base camp. And it's like luxury.
Will you apply, for like backpacking, I'll use a shorter sleeping pad?
Especially for higher altitudes and weight considerations. I'll do that sometimes. I'll have a full length bottom,
Yeah.
and then just know that I'm going to put a rope, for example, as insulation underneath my feet. May not be the most comfortable, or some of my extra clothing or something like that, and use not a full length pad, but use a 3/4 length pad. But I'll have a full length for the closed cell pad. Yep. Okay, backpacks. Okay. More of a day type pack. It's nice if you have nice attachment points for your crampons or your holsters for your ice tools or ice axe or something like that. Something that fits you well. And then a bigger pack. This is a Kelty pack of all things. I don't think, maybe this is a personal bias, but I don't think of a Kelty as a very high-end brand. They used to make this Spectra. It's made out of Spectra, like climbing gear, pack. And the thing that I also like about this is all of these pockets come off. The top comes off and has a belt, and I can use that as just a small summit, or one of the front attachment points is also even has, it attaches on, but it already has pre-strung cord on it plus little shoulder straps. And again, you can when you're hauling in gear, use this as extra space on your pack, and then you go for your summit push and break your pack multi-use and be able to use this as a small summit pack. So things along those lines. You can't, it always blows me away, they say you can't dye Spectra, so it comes in one color, which is what I call dirt, is the color that it will be soon enough. Stove, we missed stove. The default for stove in high altitude, going up to about 18,000 feet, is the MSR XGK. And that's the, it's like a jet engine. You turn it off and you go, oh, thank you, it's so quiet when you turn it off. But this thing puts out the BTUs and is great for melting snow. You'll want some kind of stove platform, either manufactured or built yourself from that side. You're gonna want a big pot. I like, yeah, they have all those fancy 4-liter, or not 4-liter, excuse me, titanium pots, super light. REI, cheapo aluminum pot. I pulled off the handle because I didn't need it, save a couple ounces. But you'll want a big pot for melting snow. You could use down to a 2-liter pot, but you're going to be putting snow in very often to try to melt your water. This, you can put quite a bit of snow in, leave it for a while, not have to worry about it, do other things in your tent while you melt your water. A good pop gripper, things along those lines. One of the things I really love, again, is the backpacker pantry. They make a cover. It's actually for baking like pizzas in the backcountry and stuff like that. It's a kit, but you can get these covers separately. And then you can put this cover over your pot and your stove with your conventional aluminum guard around the stove. And then it really seals in the heat. You'll use a lot less fuel. As you get higher and higher though, you're going to have to start taking this off more and more, or completely off, so you're not starving your stove of fuel. Once you get above 18,000 feet, you're really having problems using the liquid gas stoves, the white gas type stoves such as this, and you're really having to move more into a isobutane canister type stove, because that's what you have to use where there isn't enough oxygen for the liquid fuel from that side.
More and more, we are seeing a lot of jet oil type products, and we'll talk a little more when we go into the nutrition and food thing. For the purpose of this class, you can definitely get by with that.
Yes.
When you get into extreme cold, I still default to white gas, but I know plenty of people who have jet boiled their way up to Nolly, so it is possible. We'll have that discussion in the food class.
Okay, last couple things that I see up here. Bringing some kind of cup, a double walled but fairly light cup to be able to drink out of. Your teas, your cocos, your soups and ramens and things like that. I use a little piece of duct tape. That way I always know where my spoon is. A spoon is universal. I use it for all foods in the backcountry. And actually, I made just a little Ensolite holder for this, and when I'm rehydrating my food, if I don't have it inside of my clothes because I'm doing something where I'm worried about it, then I can put it in here and it'll keep it warm. So I always take, if you use pre-bought freeze-dried food, and we'll talk more about pre-bought versus doing it ourselves in the food portion, so I won't go into that tonight. I take all of my food outside. Why do I want to carry 20 of these aluminum foil things up on a trip? I'll bring one, possibly like this, where I can put this food inside this. I will also go ahead and put all of my food into freezer, key is freezer, Ziploc bags. You can pour boiling water directly into the freezer Ziploc bags, and then again, if you're a little cold, you put it in the inside pocket of your down jacket, it warms you up while it's rehydrating, or you put it in here or something like that. Plus, I don't like the serving size of the store-bought. I'll eat half of that and then ramen and different things, and that way I can divide one package, for example, into 2 meals, and I just label the outside of it of what it is. The last thing that I saw up here, if you're a music fan or an audiobook fan like I am, having some kind of music luxury item is a great thing. Nowadays, more of these are solid states, so you don't have to worry about it. The old type iPods that have a hard drive in them, it was hilarious when we did Shishapangma 10 years ago in 2005. Everybody was getting up to advanced base camp, and all of their iPods were dying. And that's because they have hard drives, and the hard drives were crashing because there wasn't the air to sustain them. I listen to music above 25,000 feet using the small solid state ones. Speaking of luxury, the only other luxury item that I'm a fan of, I know Greg is as well, and other instructors, is when you get into your tent to sacrifice to bring the ounce or two for a nice lightweight pair of down booties. Get out of your boots, put dry socks on, slip into your down booties. Life is good. So, I know I was shotgunning information out. Any other questions before I spend like 8 minutes or so talking about class stuff? Okay, let's go right into that. If you want to pull out the handout, which looks like this one, this is the class equipment list. A lot of these things, again, we've already talked about, so we'll go fairly quick. Hand and toe warmers, actually I missed those up here. You'll want to bring those for your field sessions. Hand warmers are really just fine down here in Colorado. When you start getting to high altitudes, I use the toe warmers even as hand warmers. These are made to work in a lower oxygen environment, your closed boots. So what's lower oxygen? At altitudes, lower oxygen. So these are typically will be warmer in low oxygen environments, and that's why I've used those. Occasionally I've tried the full foot, warmers as well. And they even have electric boot liners and socks and gloves and stuff nowadays. I won't go into that. Okay, crampons we talked about. First layer, so you're going to want long underwear, mid to lightweight, obviously synthetic. I took that as a given. I didn't talk about that there. Second layer, you're going to want soft shell or some 200, 300 weight fleece or the thinner puff jacket, some kind of wind shell and pants, Gore-Tex, Event, any of your favorite fabrics from that side, and then the insulation layer on top of it, your down jacket with a hood preferably, and again, you can get by with some things here in the class. If you have a down jacket that doesn't have a hood, don't go buy a new jacket right now just for that purpose and stuff. Gaiters, insulated mittens, second pair of mittens, glove liners, goggles, glasses, warm hat, balaclava. Stop me at any time. I'm just going to point out things that are more specific and unique. A day pack, that's what we'll primarily need. We'll talk about it more later, but for your first day, the day that we're at City Rock, we will want you to bring all of your gear that you're going to have for the class, because we're going to do a gear check. And you can ask questions at the time. Maybe we'll set up a couple tents, things like that. Again, if you don't have all the gear at that point in time, not a problem. Some of the things you can rent, like boots you can rent from different places in town. If you're concerned about, I don't have a warm enough boot for the class and stuff along those lines. Ice axe, you want an ice axe, and you want it sized correctly. In general, as you get more and more experience, you're going to want a shorter ice axe than a longer one. This is not a walking stick. This is something that you want, about, when your arm's straight, about your ankle height or shorter is how you should size your ice axe. Any good shop will help you out with that as well. Helmet harness, chest harness. So this is something, personally, don't go out buy any.
Talk about T versus B rating.
So we did real quick, we'll talk, there are ratings to ice axe. There's a technical rating, something that's rated at a higher level. And some are at that level. Greg has one, he's a fan of those. Those are going to be heavier. They're going to be way more and be not necessarily bulkier from that side. But just knowing, and I'd look it up or we'll talk about it separately, but in case of time, or do you want to say just a couple words on that?
Yeah, just B stands for basic and T stands for technical. A technical rated ice axe can work as an anchor in a pinch, and it's rated to be an anchor, and that's why I like one. There are very few out there if you're just going off the shelf at REI or Mountain Chalet. So again, I can bring mine in next time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Show you what a T rated looks like.
And this is again the advertised versus what you're going to do. Would I not use a ice axe that's a B-rated ice axe in an emergency situation as an anchor because it didn't have a T rating? No, I'd use it, but it's got additional limitations, right? Just know what those are. Okay. Well, you can ask more questions going through the technical gear, the carabiners, locking carabiners, they're all on the list. We still say oval carabiners. You can get by with non-oval Ds and stuff like that. The wire gates, especially in the snow, are very good in ice from that side. Some of the wire gates have gone to an extreme micro size nowadays, and they're these teeny little beaners that they're great for like sport climbing or something like that. Again, there is absolutely no way you're going to be able to use that teeny beaner with this mint. So think about, oh, it's half an ounce lighter and it's smaller and everything else. Am I going to be able to use it with my mittens? That's my caveat from that perspective. ATC or reverso from that side, a pulley. Now when we talk about pulley, I do want to show you this to make sure you don't buy the wrong pulley. What we're talking about is a pulley like this, not a big rescue pulley. That's the size of this. I'll just hold it up here again. So this is the type, and the other thing that you'll want to look at from the pulley perspective is something that splits open like this, not something that you have to feed. Now this is the norm, it's very rare that they don't split. That way you can just drop the rope in and close it up. You don't want to have to feed it through because you're not going to be able to in a crevasse rescue. You're going to be in the middle of the rope. You want to drop it in and close it up. Okay?
Is that a pencil a good model?
Yep.
That's good. Actually, REI's house brand, I have one of their pulleys, been using it for years.
Yep.
It's a little cheaper, it works great, Black Diamond, good ones.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. You're just looking for the small side and split, and it doesn't have to be a ratchet. Some you'll hear about ratcheting. That's for like big wall hauling and climbing. Very rare that you'll see it in this small of a beaner anyway, but you don't need the ratcheting.
Did you say whether you prefer steel bearings or nylon bearings? Steel?
I haven't thought about it to that level of detail, to tell you the truth. One thing that we should always, as instructors, be willing to tell you when we don't have experience with something. I'm never going to fake my way through something. Maybe some other instructors do. I've never looked at that attribute in deciding to buy a pulley.
So you haven't had a problem with nylon ones?
No. Nope, not at all.
Microtraction's a good option for that pulley.
What's that?
Are microtraction's a good option for that pulley?
The little microtraction, those teeth type thing you're
Yeah,
talking
the
about?
pencils, they're
Yeah.
pulley with the sender teeth in it also. So you can.
I would have to see the particular one to know how we'd want to use it. Those are usually mainly one-way direction. There are some situations where you may need to reverse the system and let it back out. So that would be my concern is how can you do that with that type of device? So,
You just take the sender off. You just flip that.
yeah, and that's why I'd say I probably need to see it. So without having it mentally or, in my mind or being able to see it, I just can't answer that. Webbing, we got a bunch of different webbings down. We'll talk about how you use that. One thing also I didn't point out, good bags for international travel. Plus you're going to put these on yaks, you're going to put these on mules in South America. The rubberized versus just the Cordura type ones are very good. Every once in a while, like this black one here, the same factory that does these North Faces will do non-North Face runs of their gear, and then it costs about half as much by not putting the North Face logo on it, and it's in the exact same bag. So look for those. Prosix, if you have any questions about Prosix and tying your Prosix, come with your stuff untied and we can always dial that in at that City Rock day from that side. Daisy chain, personally I like the personal anchor system, which is the loops. Daisy chains are really meant for aid climbing. They are not meant for what we use. These have separate loops that are intertwined from that side. And there's Rock and Ice has, if you subscribe to them, or not if you subscribe, but if you get their emails or go to their website, they've had a tremendous series this year of gear testing by Black Diamond of different systems. They had one on daisy chains saying how all the people use daisy chains, how they were never intended, and how they rip through. So the PASs are much better if you don't have one and you're looking at buying one. Okay. Snowshoes, poles, tether, water bottle, sled duffel, overnight stuff, sleeping bags, and I didn't bring my sleeping bags or anything like that, but ratings of sleeping bags. Matters how comfy you want to be, how you sleep. Are you a warm sleeper? Are you a cold sleeper? And what level of clothes do you want to wear at night as well? I have a negative 40-degree bag. If I bought many years ago, and that was kind of the norm. Nowadays, I'd probably not even go for more than a negative 20, even for a Denali or a Himalayan type climb. -20, -30, -40. They're big, they're bulky, they're great, but they're huge and they take a lot of space and a lot of weight. Questions? No, it's okay. Yeah.
Just to comment on the trekking pole, it's not on the equipment list either. When you buy trekking poles, they come with these little plastic things that don't have powder baskets on them. You want powder baskets, right?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, so
Yours have powder baskets. But normally they don't have powder baskets on them.
yep. And it used to be the norm that at least if it didn't come with it, you could go ahead and swap these out. Some of the ultra lightweight, especially black diamond carbon ones nowadays, you can't swap the basket out. It drives me nuts. And it comes with this teeny basket about this big, just meant for trekking, and you can't swap it out for a powder basket like this. You want a powder basket. Thank you.
You just need one.
What's that?
You just need one, right?
Pole, yeah. If you're doing a lot of snowshoeing to approach a climb, I'd probably possibly bring 2. Rainier, I bring 2, and after the first day of the approach, I'll cache it at the base. When we get onto the glacier, I'll cache it, dig down into the glacier, leave my tennis shoes, one of my trekking poles, etc., and I'll pull it on the way out. But that way, I've used my, what I wanted for the approach, and just hiking in my tennis shoes or ankle height trekkers and stuff like that, and have 2 poles, and then just go to the 1 pole for the glacier and my ice axe. Thanks. I know a ton of info. We're all around to help answer questions for you.
You kind of, as you progress, in my case, I'm willing to invest more and more money in my gear. I mean, I'm inherently cheap. I'm a school teacher. I do not have a lot of money. So
It's nice to see that another school teacher can actually do this stuff.
yes, you can do so. We have time, we don't have the money. But it is something that I slowly have acquired more and more stuff over the years. And I've been willing to spend more to lose 5 ounces. And you start getting the justification in your head. I spent how many thousands of dollars to get to South America? And will I spend another 200 to lose 12 ounces on my equipment and maybe make the difference between making the summit or not? You get these rationalizations going, they're wonderful. But I also will tell you right now that I have stuff in my pack that I bought at Target because it was cheap and it worked well, and it doesn't, it doesn't cost me anything in terms of weight. So yeah, for this class, before you go out buying lots and lots of new stuff, unless you're infinitely wealthy, ask us, and that's why we'll review all this stuff at City Rock. We'll give you individual feedback on what works.
I told you,
That's
we'd
our
get the sun.
5-minute warning. They're
Think
nice.
about everything that you do in everyday life when you're getting ready for a trip. How much toilet paper do you need to bring? How much toilet paper do you go through a day? I was getting ready for some of my trips. This seems odd, I had my roll of toilet paper in the bathroom. My wife didn't use it, I used it, so I could figure out what was my average toilet paper use in a week.
Okay, difference between him and me, I bought very little toilet paper, I use snow.